on to, let's just do this, okay? All right, so welcome back to the V-List podcast. I'm your host, Victoria, and I am joined today by Empress Tainia,
Yes.
who is actually my therapist, y'all. So we ain't gonna get into too much of my personal details because y'all know I do share stuff here on the V-List about lessons I've learned in therapy and through some sessions with you. And I do talk a lot about my journey in therapy. But, I'm just going to have a conversation today with Empress, and I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, how long have you been a practitioner, all that good
stuff. So as you already know, my name is Empress Tainia. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here this Sunday afternoon and just be able to share some insight, share some energy. So for all the listeners that are here with us, I am a health and wellness practitioner with focus on African holistic modality. And I also work within Western mental health, where we focus more on the psychiatric side. So being a qualified mental health professional, where we focus more so on the psychotropic medications, hospitalization, case management, connection to additional community resources, psychiatrists, outpatient therapy, sometimes substance abuse, outpatient therapy as well, and also working within the homeless community. So all of those things, I've been doing for I say all my life. I've been doing that unknowingly, but officially on paper, it's been almost 10 years that I've been doing that. Yeah. And so how did I get to that point? I think really just like my own experience of things that I've gone through. I grew up actually in the church. I was baptized Catholic, and that's kind of like my background, right, of what I grew up in, and just creating a sense of like, okay, here's your introduction to, God, Allah, Buddha, whatever it is that you want to call it, right? And that preset was really just setting the foundation as far as like what my discipline is going to be, as far as that introduction to, what now people will call spirituality and things of that sort. And then, within that experience, different things that I had gone through as being a, survivor of physical abuse and things like that, that really propelled me to go more into a holistic route. I know a lot of times within that community, religious community, I don't really consider myself religious. I'm more so, am a part of the conscious community, which people may say spirituality, but I just look at it as consciousness, being aware. And being a survivor of somebody who's been physically abused since, early childhood for many, many years, and going through that process in adulthood to be like, okay, why did these things happen? These things were also happening in the church, to other small children. And I started to ask questions like, why are these things happening within a church? And if this is supposed to be a community essentially about, we want people to be kind. We want people to be loving. We want to be able to provide support to the community. All of those positive things. Why is that happening here? And so a shift with me started to happen where I was like, I don't really consider myself so much religious. I'm more so just like, I think every religion has something to offer, right? It has some form of discipline. I can take something away from Christianity. I can take something away from Buddhism, Judaism. I can take something away from all of those and make it my own, right? Which is the consciousness part, is being aware of like, what are all of the messages? And the messages are, all the same, right? Not literally, but figuratively, of like, be a good person, do the right thing, be mindful of others, be loving, right? We want to have a loving environment. And so, that's my approach when it comes to religion present day. And then, especially within our community, is very common of like, leave it to God. God's going to fix it, and
I'm glad you're mentioning that, because that was the question that I had for you. Like, having that extensive background in just like mental health practices and, you know, even in the substances to like assist with, you know, imbalances chemically and everything. I always wondered, because I too grew up in the church. I grew up in a very religious household, the Holiness Church. So, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff with that. But there was a lot of, now looking back, I can realize as a child, I didn't understand really what was going on all the time, but I was smart enough to know, okay, that person may not necessarily be right in the head, right?
Yeah.
But it was always associated with a spirit, right? So it was always like, oh, she got a spirit of this, or that's a spirit of that, or whatever. And while I do believe that there is some connection between like spirituality and like spirits possessing people, which can literally torment and live in people for years, which can call or present themselves as like mental disorders. I'm wondering how much of that you are able to recognize or, you know, acknowledge in what you've seen in over your 10 years. You know, how many times are you like working with a client and you're like, oh, this just might be a demon. You know, like seriously, versus somebody who literally like may need medication or may just need talk therapy. Like how do you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So let me start by saying this: when our community says leave it to God, I think that we're just placing a responsibility on something else, right? Where it's like, no, we have to also be responsible and be like, what are the things that I can actively do? Because leaving it to God is saying like, you know, God is going to be able to put opportunities in place for me to ensure that the work, the action that I'm doing is going to be met with opportunity so that I can receive the output that I'm looking for. Right. It's not just like, oh, I just sit back. OK, yeah, God's going to magically like just do something. No, I have to actively be doing things to be met with opportunity for that outcome to happen that I'm looking for. So now when it comes to, you know, just the aspect of, you know, how you said identifying like, oh, this person got a demon. Like,
right.
I will say this, right? Everything in my world, right, when it comes to looking at things from an African and holistic perspective, is that you can have the spirit of a dying or living entity, right? So if all I'm drinking is alcohol, I don't drink any water, right? I'm carrying the spirit of death. Right? I'm carrying that because I'm not putting anything in my body that's going to fortify my body, that's going to stabilize my body, that's going to nourish my body. Right? So it's not just like, oh, it's a demon. It's like, no, sometimes that demon may be the things that you are putting into your body, your thoughts, the things that you're drinking, the things that you're eating, the things that you're listening to, the music, the conversations that you're having with people where it's like, I don't have any business having this conversation. Right. So the spirit of that energy, right? The spirit of anger, right? As somebody who struggles with that and has continuously been working through that of just like, okay, I know that I have this spirit of anger that lives within me. Right? Because different things where you may be like, oh, this is just a small thing. It's not really something to be angry about. But somebody who's like, no, that small thing, it literally gets me just so angry. And I'm like, oh, if I could just take something and just smash it. Right. Right. So the spirit of anger, understanding how these different things can live within us. Right. And being aware of like, where is this thing coming from? Now, when it comes to actual entities, when we're talking about spirit bodies and things like that, funny enough, today I was talking about that, and I'll share a funny story with you. My grandmother, who is, she had never been to a Baptist church. I'm of Dominican descent. So, you know, she had never been to a Baptist church. She doesn't speak English. So we were going to support, you know, friend of the family. Someone had transitioned, and someone, while we were there at this gathering, someone ended up being taken in by the spirit and started speaking in tongues and was running up and down the aisles. And my grandmother is like, hey, you all need to call the paramedics. Something's wrong with her. And I try not to laugh, but I'm like, no, she has the spirit. And she's like, no, but she's like talking and like saying weird things, and it almost looks like she's foaming at the mouth. You all need to call the paramedics. So even just culturally, right? It's like, okay, what's going on here? Like, she's thinking she's having convulsions or a heart attack, and we're sitting here just like, as the pastor's talking about, like, oh, this person has transitioned, and we want to give well wishes to the family, and everybody's just sitting there calm. Now, nobody's saying like, hey, let's stop the sermon right now and let's address this. And so I do believe that there is capacity for spirits to be able to exercise their energy through the person. Why? Because if we even look in the aspect of person, spirit, mind, right? Body, spirit, mind. All of those things collectively come together for us to be what? Present. Right? When you don't have it, let's say you're a vegetable. Somebody's a vegetable, they comatose. They're on a breathing machine, right? What happened? Their body is not functioning. What's their spirit doing? The spirit is idle. Right. It's not doing anything. It just is sitting in there. So the spirit needs the body in order to be able to experience this realm.
I agree.
Right? Without it, how is it going to communicate? It has to find different ways to be able to communicate. Sometimes people may look at numbers and be like, oh, I see 555. I see 222. That's a way of somebody communicating with me. Another example I always provide my clients is like, let's say you want to pray to your ancestors, right? I'm very firm in being able to attribute respect to our ancestors that have transitioned, right? We don't forget them. They have transitioned to whatever other realm it is that they have gone to, right? And keeping their memory alive is important so that we acknowledge that, okay, from whatever other realm they are still supporting us. They are still in us, right? Because we share that same DNA, right? We share that same DNA that has some of the same information on there. And so they still exist. They live through us, right? And affirming that means that as we're giving thanks and communicating with those ancestors, sometimes they may show a sign and you may say, you know what? I'm looking for a sign, Grandpa Osi, wherever you are, just give me a sign. Show up on a butterfly on a car, or let me hear somebody say the word butterfly, or whatever the case may be. Maybe a commercial pops up. Now you go hop on 95 and you driving on the expressway and you see butterfly on somebody's license plate. You look on that car, there's a huge message that somebody done wrote on the back of their windshield, and it says, be great today. Everything that you touch is anointed today. Voila. Is that a coincidence?
Yes.
No,
I don't think that there are coincidences. Right. Yeah. I personally don't think that that things are just a coincidence. I think everything is connected. I do think that, like, I believe in that too. Like, I believe in, the spirits need a modality, like spirits need a body, or they need something to operate in. And I just always wondered, because I also study psychology, and I think growing up in church, it kind of made me interested in psychology, because I was like, how much of this is actually like mental health versus like just spiritual warfare, people not having the right protections or the right, guides. And I just always thought it was, but I understand now the difference, but I'm just, because I know that being having a human experience, we're going to experience human emotions. We're going to have, different things that affect us, our wellness, our mental health. But when there are like sicknesses or mental illnesses, if they're deemed that way, it's just always been interesting to me how much of it is like spiritual. You know what I mean? And also, to your point, I know in some Western religions and some, cultures, they believe like that, generational curses, right?
Yeah.
Or generational, even blessings, right? So if someone is suffering from like a really severe mental health crisis, is that like how wrong is it, I guess, to look at that as like, that may be a generational curse, especially if it's like a history of mental health, issues or problems in a family. Like some of those, mental illnesses like schizophrenia sometimes can be passed down, you know, but like, is that like a spiritual curse that needs to be broken over this family, you know? And if so, like, you know, so that's why I'm just always interested in how practitioners who are also spiritual, how you were able to like weave, you know, or connect the dots there.
Yeah, I believe that it's a culmination of things, right? So spiritual warfare, like I say, there is above, so there is below. There are realms that exist above just this earthly plane, right? And so if those realms exist and you believe that those realms exist, you think it's just humans that saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to do this to that person, or I'm going to set up some type of trap for this person. You think it's just people doing that? No. If there's realms that are above us,
right,
then there means that who's ever in those realms is looking down and saying, yeah, I'm going to do this, and we're going to set this up, and we're going to put that there. And yeah, we're going to send some of this type of energy, the energy of pain, the energy of suffering, the energy of, you know, lack of fulfillment. We're going to send that down to this lineage over here.
Wow.
Right. So they sending that energy down. Right. So now you have the spirit of suffering that has wreaked havoc within your lineage. Now even take it a step further. DNA is like your USB. What's your USB do? It has all this information, all this data, right? You got your files on there. You got your music. You got pictures. You got documents. What's your DNA? It is an encryption file. It is encrypted with data. Whose data? Your grandma's data, your great grandma, your great great grandma, your grandpa, your great grandpa. On and on and on and on and on. That's why we talk about lineage. So if that data is encrypted with their stories, their traumas, their experiences, what are you carrying in your DNA? That same encryption, right? It takes for somebody to say, you know what? Let me plug this USB and see what is on these files.
See what's in here. Yeah.
Let me see. Let me start reading and let me start looking through. Hold on, this said it in 1936 that what was going on? And who left and where? Hold on, let me do some more research. And this is saying back in 1700s, right? Because we're talking about lineage. We're not just talking about you and your mom and your dad and your grandparents. We're talking about lineages, the very umps and ages past your existence, right? That all of that information is encrypted upon your DNA. That's your data. That's your information. So as I said, so there is above, so there is below. So you have these energies, right? Where it's like, oh, we sending that energy, that spirit of suffering, right? And it's wreaked havoc in the lineage before you even existed, before you were thought of, before you were even a cell.
Wow.
Right?
Already working, wreaking havoc. Or setting it up, or setting you up for greatness. But in terms of mental illness,
right.
Yes,
in the context of mental illness, right? So what happens? People are going through all of this suffering. And what happens? Now you have, okay, the PTSD, okay, the depression, okay, the schizophrenia, okay, the bipolar, and so forth and so forth, right? In Western health, they'll tell you, oh, you're going to live with these things for the rest of your life. In my practice, I'm like, no, you have to decide I'm going to change the encryption of my DNA.
Yes.
I have to decide to change it. So that means I'm not just competing with, okay, the things that I may have experienced with these other people, things that may have happened with my mom, my dad, my grandparents, whoever else, but also the energy that's being sent from someone else to me because I'm a product of this lineage. Right?
Wow.
Which is why I'm of the belief that every generation, someone is set forth to be like, you know what? We putting a stop to this.
Yes.
So they're the one that's plugging in the USB and saying, hold on, let me see what's on here. Oh, no. We about to change this up. Hold on. We in 2023. Let me set this up for 2025. Let me set this up for 2030, 2050. Right. And what's to come.
I love that. I feel like, I feel like in this generation, and maybe even in the previous, generation, I feel like there are a lot of those curse breakers, because mental wellness has become more of a focus in a lot of our lives, and people have made it a priority because we saw a lot of the suffering, we saw a lot of the pain, and a lot of the stuff that some of our, our most recent ancestors had to go through. And it's like, I don't know what was wrong with Uncle Billy, but I don't want to be like Uncle Billy. So let me figure out if I got any Uncle Billy in me. And if I do, let me fix this, So I think it is like, I think collectively we're kind of like helping to raise the consciousness of, the human experience for at least this generation, and maybe hopefully the next few generations to come, because of all the trauma and the suffering and, the curses, I guess, that have been carried throughout the lineage from years before, like you were saying. So I just think that, I like having these conversations because I believe that way. But if you were to talk to someone who, doesn't, they'd be like, okay, well, or that person's just sick. It's like, yeah, but there's a reason. The same way, like you were talking about DNA, the same way cancer can be hereditary. It's those cells. It's in your DNA. Like there's something that is there that is causing this, and it doesn't just come from nowhere. So I feel like for my, family, I'm not the only one in my family who's gone to therapy, but I do believe that, like, among my siblings, and even just some of my cousins, and, I am an advocate for therapy. I realize I need it because I also realized that there were things that I witnessed and saw and experienced growing up that I was like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want that. So I want to do what I can to prevent that from continuing to wreak havoc in my life. Right. But also, if I am to have a lineage of my own, I want to make sure I set them up so that they're not suffering. So yeah. I just think it's really interesting. Yeah. Cool. So how much of that, like, when did you decide to, like, or did you ever, like, make the, like, switch from just, like, the Western practice, which I know you still probably do that, but, like, when did you decide, like, oh, no, I want to do more holistic wellness?
So what would it be? Within the past 5 years, I would say, I really stepped into being like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to practice this. Because so much so, I'm like, even in the Western side of things, I tell people off record, you don't have to take these medications if you don't want to. Because you take the medication and then you think you're fixing one problem and then you end up with these other things. Right? Which is like, it's not a cure. They can't tell you legally, they can't tell you, hey, you take this medication, it's going to cure that depression. It's going to cure that bipolar. It's going to cure them hallucinations. You over here seeing things, and which that's a whole nother thing, right? Because, they'll, within Western medicine, the things that we're talking about will seem, crazy of like, what do you mean? Like you're seeing things, like seeing what? Gooby goblins or,
right.
We got to give you some medication so that you can stop seeing gooby goblins, so I made that transition, and I tell people, like, look, you can go the holistic route. I will tell you how to go about doing so if that's what you so choose. So that means we're going to be doing some root work. So that means you're going to be going and digging up a hole outside and burying yourself in the dirt. Not burying, like but planting yourself in the soil, because you are a seed. You are a seed. Before you existed, what happened? A seed had to come together, right? Well, let's break it down science, because we can't refute science. You can refute what people belief systems are, but we cannot refute science. When before you existed, a seed had to be present. That seed had to be nourished. Okay? It had to be nourished. It had to be inside of the womb. Right? And receive those nutrients over a course of time before it was ready to exit. So what happens? Now you're not a seed anymore. You still need sunlight. You still need water. What the womb need? It still need water. It still needs sunlight. So once you exit the womb, you still need water. You still need soil, right? You still need water. You still need soil, right? To plant that seed. Anything that you want to bring to fruition, you have to plant it. It isn't just like, oh, you know what? Hey, I got these seeds. I want to grow some strawberries. Let me just throw them in the air. No, you got to plant it. You got to plant it. You got to water it. You have to provide sun. You have to talk to it. Right? I've seen this. I watched this documentary where there was like two plants. One plant had all the same environment, sun, water, perfect environment, both of them. Only difference was one plant, the person was telling it negative things, right? If you look at things negative or positive, right? Oh, this plant is ugly. You're terrible. You're not growing. You move slow. Just all these ill things. Whereas the other plant, you're telling it, wow, you're growing so beautiful. Wow, you're being nourished. Wow, look at the home that you've been presented with. You're so loved. We're so thankful of all the fruits that this plant is going to bear for us. And what happened? That plant grows tall. The other plant, it just wilted, died. So what's that tell you? The energy of your words. What's that do?
Have power.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe, look, as much as I believe it, sometimes I have to remind myself of it, because it's not even just the words, it's the thoughts too, right? And that's where, my struggle is. I may not say anything, but what's going on up here is a whole battle, literally back and forth. And I have to consciously tell myself to think the opposite of how I'm feeling, so that I can try to change not only my vibrations and just feel better, but also just so that I don't bring to fruition the things that I don't want to happen, and it's like, and then even in that, because I understand the power of words, I understand the power of your thoughts.
Right.
And because, personally, like, I also understand gifting, right? So for me, I've always had, I guess you could say I'm a seer a little bit, but it's more like I've always had dreams. Since I was a child, I would have dreams and they would happen. And I used to be afraid to tell my mom a lot. I tell my mom everything, but I would tell my mom whenever I have a dream and it would happen, she would be like, you just need to pray, God's giving you a sign or a message or whatever. But I used to be afraid to tell my dreams because I thought I was making it happen by saying it. Because, growing up in church, it's like, oh, life and death is in the power of the tongue. Your words have power, which is true. Yes. So I felt like, well, if I don't say this dream that I had, then it won't happen. Right? But it would still happen. Stuff would still be happening. And I was like, did I make this happen? Because I dreamt it. And I would tell my mom. And so she was just like, no, as a young, person, she was trying to get me to understand gifting. Like, no, God trusts you with that message. And so he wants you to either pray about it or maybe warn the person or just, there's something you can do to help change it. But you telling the dream doesn't mean that you're making it happen. Right. But so I've learned, over time how to like kind of control that. And whenever I do have a dream, especially if it's disturbing, how to journal it, how to pray about it, how to, so that it, not necessarily so that it doesn't come to fruition, but just so I know what to do with that information. But it's hard when it's even in your own life and you're just like, it's not necessarily a dream, but because I understand the power of, thoughts and dreams and words. If I'm thinking something, it's like, how much of that is my intuition trying to warn me? Like, hey, that's probably what's going to happen. So you just need to prepare yourself for it, as opposed to it just me being anxious about, I'm like having a natural fear of something, right? Like, oh man, I don't want that to happen. Or, oh man, I'm worried about this, which that's a natural human thing to be worried about things sometimes. But if I'm like ruminating over it and it's like a constant thing that's bothering me, it's like, okay, is this my intuition trying to just tell me like, hey, prepare yourself for this scenario because you have a gift, so you probably know that that's what's going to happen, right? So I feel kind of conflicted in that regard sometimes, in that like I don't want to speak something negative, but I also am like, but that's a possibility. And then, so it's just, I get conflicted sometimes with that, but therapy does help. I'll say that. I'll say your sessions do help, because every time we have a session, I end up leaving feeling like more strengthened and like, okay, I got this, and understanding, I guess, weighing the outcome, because I do also understand, that you can pray about certain things. You can ask God for certain things. So you can like will certain things into existence, or you can prevent things from happening. But yeah, I do struggle with that. Like just those negative thoughts, or just the thoughts in general that like scare me. And it's like, stop giving power to that, like stop giving power to that thought, because even if it is a forewarning or a premonition, I do think sometimes you can still prevent it from happening. I mean, why are you laughing?
I said, because what's going to happen, it's already happened. Meaning that even if you may say to yourself, all right, I'm giving this information and I'm going to try to stop it from happening. How can you stop something from happening if it's already happened? If you're already seeing it, it's like, okay, we letting you know it's already happened, whether it happened here in this realm or another realm. So that brings into question realities, right? We have multiple realities, not just one. We have multiple. Yeah. What's the easiest way? You have the reality of society that you operate within. Then you have your own personal reality, which you operate in within your home space, within the comfort of your close friends and family. Right? So you receive this dream, right? And maybe it hasn't happened in this particular reality, but it's already happened. It's already happened in another reality, which is the reality of your dream.
Wow. But then I can also use that information to perhaps shift or maybe, affect the outcome in this reality, right? By like either through prayer or just, willing, maybe just doing like, just changing your thoughts and thinking about alternate outcomes of that, so that when that presents itself, when the situation presents itself, it's like, here's what we could do to make this outcome better, as opposed to a devastation.
And even with that, right, is like, let's go back to dream state. So the dream reality is real. I can't tell you it's not real. It's real because it's what's happening in your mind. It's what you're seeing, what you're envisioning. So let's say you experience that dream in its full capacity in that dream state, right? And it's happening within your physical body. Your eyes are closed. You're traveling places, seeing different things, interacting with different people. Now you're receiving the insight, the intuit to be like, okay, what choices did I make here? How did I operate in this dream state, in this dream reality? Who are the other people? What were they doing? Can I remember the story for full account? Not just like piece parses, but from full, middle, ending. Beginning, middle, and ending, right? To see, okay, what were the missteps? Or what were the steps that I took that allowed for these things to turn out in the way that they did? Because sometimes so much so, it's not really about, okay, these things are going to happen in my other realities, but more so about what was the challenge here? And what was I able to activate in this challenge? Because maybe the challenge that was presented to you in that dream state activated something, some skill set that you're going to need in this reality. And that's what you're taking away from it. So not so much of like, oh, how do I prevent these things from happening? Or how do I alter this? But really like, okay, what was I doing in that dream? What was happening? Did I
Gotcha.
activate something? Did somebody else activate something for me? Like, okay, what was the message?
Yeah. Yeah, I do that a lot too. I do. I figure like when I have dreams, especially when I can remember, the pieces of them, I always try to look for, okay, what was this trying to either warn me about, or what, like you said, what am I supposed to take away from this? Like, what do I need to do to not necessarily prevent it from happening, but just like, what do I need to do to like kind of heal this or address this issue or address this, what was happening in the dream? Because it could be, like you said, like in the dream, it's like a physical altercation between two people, right? And you're just like, oh man, I had a dream and I was fighting this girl. But really, it's like, what is it that you need to confront, maybe with that person? Or what is it that you need to warn that person about so that it doesn't turn out into, a physical altercation? Because that could be the outcome if something's not addressed. Or that could be the outcome if you don't, maybe you fight a different way. You know what I mean? So I do believe that. I just always think it's interesting, I just always think it's interesting, like having always been able to experience that type of, those types of experiences, like in my dreams, and then having them kind of play out in a certain, it's like for that to have been happening since I was a child, even to like, I'll be 40 this year, it's still happening. I'm like, okay, now. Okay, so I understand what to do with it. And because I have a spiritual foundation, I think I understand what to do with it, but I also do just try to think practically about a lot of situations. Like, all right, what is this showing me? Like, is it something in me? Is it an anxiety that I have? Is it a fear that I have? It's like you said, is it something that I need to confront? Is it something I need to activate? Because I'm being shown this for a reason. And I think that's all a part of being just aligned, when you are like in alignment, and then God is able to speak to you through different things, whether it's your dream, like you said, signs and seeing numbers. I mean, I am a numbers person. A lot of times I don't even ask for a sign, but God will show me things, and I'm like, oh, okay, So I just take that to mean that I'm in alignment, and I feel like sometimes when I'm out of alignment, I don't have as many messages, and it was funny because recently, a few months ago, I had encountered this lady. I had only met her a couple of times, and we were just out somewhere, and she looked at me, and we were just out, and she was like, have you been getting rest? Have you been sleeping? And I was like, huh? I was like, yeah. I'm like, do I look tired or something? And she was like, no, you need to get some rest. You need to get more rest. And I was like, okay. I'm like, wow, thank you. Yeah, I guess I do. She was like, no, you need to get more rest so that you can dream. And as soon as she said that to me, I knew exactly what she was talking about. She was like, you need to get more rest so you can dream. And I was like, you're right. And to me, I took that as a message of like, I need to get back in alignment because I hadn't been dreaming, good or bad, right? But I need to get back in alignment. And whether that means resting physically, resting emotionally, resting whatever, it just is if I get back into a state of rest, I can receive messages. And that's what I took that to mean. And she once she said it, and I was like, oh, we connected. And she was like, yeah, basically that's your message. So I do feel like, it's a bit of a gift. Sometimes it could be a little scary, but I feel like whenever I am in alignment, I am able to receive messages. And I think that that's also a responsibility of mine.
Yes.
When we think about like, what is my purpose, or what am I supposed to be doing here? Well, for me, it is to receive information and to figure out what to do with that information to either make an impact in someone else's life or even just in my own. Because the actions that I take, and I think everybody needs to be aware of this, the actions that we take, they impact not just your own reality, like you were saying, but they impact the reality of others too. And that is what is contributing to this collective state of consciousness that we're all in. So I do a lot of work on trying to keep my vibration high and keep myself vibrating high, even when I'm feeling low, just doing things to keep myself high so that what I'm contributing is a high vibration, and that is contributing to the collective a high vibration. So that, and then we got a lot of work to do because it's a whole lot.
Look,
we got a lot of work to do, but I make that conscious effort. Like I was having, some struggles last night, and I realized, like, okay, yeah, full moon last night, today, it's time for releasing and all that. And I'm just like, okay, but I'm releasing some things, but there's this heaviness, and I'm wondering, where is this coming from? So that's when I know I need to kind of go into hermit mode and figure out, where is that coming from? And what do you need to do what do you need to address?
Right.
What is it that I need to address so that I can make sure when I'm going out, and I do that when I'm in hermit mode, I do that on purpose. I go within because I don't want to be around people when my vibe is off and when I'm feeling a certain type of way, because I feel like that contributes the wrong vibration.
Yes.
And so a lot of times people will be like, oh, Vic, I want to do this. You want to hang out? You want to do this? And I'm just like, nah. And it's not anything personal. It's because I want to make sure that if I'm around people, I'm vibrating at a certain level. And what I'm emitting is positive and not.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I wish you would have told me that you had this gift, Victoria. You missed that part. You missed that part. You was withholding.
Yeah. Well, now you know. Now you know. I mean, and I didn't know a lot about, your background either. I think when we started having sessions, I was referred to the Soul Care Collective. And I was like, okay, let me just look through I read some of the bios, and I connected with yours. I was like, okay, you know what? I need to talk to somebody. And I felt like you would be a great choice, and you were I was a good choice. So I'm grateful, and I for that. But I also believe everything happens for a reason, because here we are.
Yes.
Able to share your knowledge, your experiences, your expertise around this to my listeners, and this is something I talk about a lot on the V list. I do talk a lot about, spirituality, and I do talk a lot about even just therapy and things that I've experienced, but it's always good to have someone who's in the practice and in the field come on and share. And so I appreciate you for coming on, Empress. And yes, our sessions will probably be a lot more interesting now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But is there anything else that you'd like to leave with, people, just in terms of just anything you'd like to leave?
Let's see. Well, one thing that I would like to leave with the listeners and the viewers is to be aware of everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you step into, and to be purposeful with all of those things.
Yes, intentionality.
Yes, because I'm always just super big on just being aware. Just being aware. Because, as you know, people operate in a state of dormancy. You ask them like, oh, why are you driving that type of car? I'm like, what do you mean? I liked it. What do you like about it? It's a little loud, It's a little loud, to people around when they see that car, they're like, woo, okay. Ain't no just regular Honda Civic. It's just like, no, we got a lot of attraction around this Honda Civic. Like, what made you do that? What made you put all of these colors on there? You stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, if you're driving on Broad Street, we're going to know it was you. Nobody else got that car looking like that. Right? So being aware of everything that you do at all times. And if not being aware, then going back and asking yourself like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Because it's okay if you're not aware all the time in that moment, but always going back and asking yourself, okay, why did I do that? Or why was I here? Why did these things happen? Or why was this person involved in that?
Just awareness.
Yes, awareness. That's my message, is to be aware. And you don't want other people to be more aware of you than you are aware of yourself.
Ooh.
You're with yourself 24/7. More than your mom, your auntie, your cousin, brother, whoever. You're with yourself 24/7. You're responsible for knowing you more than anybody else know you.
Wow. And on that note, I think that's a great place to leave our listeners.
Yes.
Just be aware, be in a state of awareness, have awareness, do your part to raise your awareness so that we can continue to heal this generation, do our part to heal the generation. I'm not saying we're going to solve all of the world's issues, but we do have a responsibility while we're here in this human experience to raise the vibration and the consciousness of and the experience of people here.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.